As we continue to bring you the very latest out of Libya, you know one of the big headlines of the past couple of days been the build-up to the transfer of control yesterday. NATO now in full control of the operations in the battle for Libya. My next guest is in command of that military effort, and he is Canadian. Lieutenant General Charles Bouchard on the telephone this morning for his very first interview, we understand, with any media outlet. And Lieutenant General Bouchard, I thank you for being here, and good morning to you, sir.
Good morning to you, Heather.
Thank you very much. Let's begin. NATO, as I mentioned, sir, has been formally in charge of this mission in Libya for 24 hours now. How has the transition gone?
Well, indeed, we have taken over as of 600 hours yesterday morning. We took over all responsibilities for all parts of the mission. And things are going well, and I must say that great cooperation with the coalition forces. This has been a seamless effort.
That's some good news, sir. As you were taking over, we were listening in to officials in Washington at various hearings yesterday, and they were announcing that now that you're in charge, the U.S. is going to withdraw its fighter jets as of tomorrow. That's raised questions. Can NATO handle airstrikes, the airstrikes, without the U.S. military muscle?
NATO is a team, and we work together, and we have all the team to do what we need to do. Individual countries' contribution to this effort, I think, should be left to the individual countries to announce. But we have the team to meet our mandate to protect the population and the population center against attack.
They were so important, though. Obviously, they have the most advanced firepower in an air force in the world, and also they were important in terms of their capacity to refuel fighter jets in the air. Are they going to continue to provide at least that kind of support?
Well, the support is certainly there, and we are working closely with U.S. authority. But not only the U.S. is a player in this team. Our Canadian CF-18s, our ship, our maritime patrol aircraft, and our helicopter on board the ship are also a key member of this alliance.
With the U.S. pulling out of the lead role, will that have any impact on the Canadian contribution, General?
The Canadian contribution has transferred from the coalition to the NATO forces, and all Canadian forces under this operation have been transferred to NATO.
To NATO. But in terms of accelerating or augmenting or relying increasingly on those Canadian, the 6 CF-18s that are there, is their role at all going to change now that this is under NATO auspices?
We have a significant team from Canada, 2 maritime patrol aircraft, 6 F-18s plus 1 spare, 2 tanker aircraft Airbus, and also 1 helicopters. And these folks, their mandate remains the same in terms of providing the support required to protect the population.
Okay. What we're seeing in Libya, General, as I'm sure you are as well, of recent days, are the rebels who are fighting the Gaddafi forces. Those rebels are retreating. As Gaddafi loyalists learn how to deal with airstrikes and adapt to your air power, there are some analysts here who are wondering and questioning whether airstrikes alone are going to be enough to take on Gaddafi forces effectively. What do you think of that?
This is quite a chess game taking place. And indeed, the pro-Gaddafi forces have changed their tactics. They've gone to a more unconventional methods, and they are shielding themselves with innocent civilians around them. But we will continue. We are an adaptive force. We adapt to the situation, and we're going to take the right measures to make sure that we can protect the population against attack.
So you are adapting to them, but as we've discussed, they too are adapting to you. What next measures may you adopt?
Oh, it's a bit like asking the coach to show you his playbook. So I'd rather not talk about the operational details of the force because of safety to the mission and safety to the people of it. But I can tell you that we have the capability and the capacity to adapt, and we are indeed working to that end.
Okay. Let me raise with you, if I could, some of the issues that we're talking about here as possible additional options. The ongoing debate over whether to arm the rebels. France, we know, is already doing that. There's a great deal of discussion in the United States about this, and some in the United States would like to do that to an even greater extent. Will you arm the rebels fighting Gaddafi?
That is not a decision for the NATO forces to take. This will be an international decision made, I'm sure, involving the key players under the United Nations. My mandate and the mandate of NATO forces is to enforce the embargo, enforce the no-fly zone, and provide and help protecting the population.
Is part of that mandate also regime change?
Not at all. Not at all. My mandate is very clear, and that is protecting the civilian population and population center against attack from Libyan forces.
Do you foresee this NATO mission eventually involving boots on the ground, sir?
Boots on the ground are not in the mandate that I have, are not in the mandate of NATO.
At this present time?
My mission is, I receive
Yes.
my orders from the North Atlantic Council, and for sure I can tell you that my mandate does not include boots on the ground.
I ask because there are those who are discussing the whole question of mission creep. That'll be a term with which you're well familiar, and the potential inevitability of that. Even as we saw in Iraq in the first Gulf War, but also as we saw in the NATO mission over Serbia during Kosovo's breakaway attempt. That began with bombing, military targets and then escalated to an all-out bombing campaign. So the talk of mission creep as being inevitable, what do you think about that?
I will tell you that my mandate is quite clear, and that mandate does not include troops on the grounds. My mandate remains the enforcement of those three missions that I've talked to you about, and mainly is to protect the population.
One of the main questions for people here watching this unfold is how long this is likely to continue, and I know that's a very difficult question with a 3 months allocated and allotted for that. Do you think that might be enough time?
Well, we're in the first 24 hours of this mission, and we're certainly positioning ourselves to achieve success as quickly as possible.
If maybe a better way of saying it might be to borrow some words from the U.S. General David Petraeus. He was talking about Afghanistan, and his big question is, tell me how this ends. So that would be my question to you.
From my perspective, my point is to bring safety and security to the people of Libya and to create an environment where diplomacy can take place. So we will stay focused with the NATO force on the safety of the population and let the other international, diplomatic, and political communities deal with that part of the puzzle.
I just want to ask you one more question about the people who you are helping. Obviously, you're protecting the citizens, but in the aspect of airstrikes, helping the rebels who are fighting the Gaddafi forces. A lot of questioning about just who the rebels are, because we don't know very much about who they are, their nature, their organization, to what extent they're linked to Al-Qaeda. And some are wondering whether the change that these airstrikes are helping to bring in, what if we live to regret those? What if they're not the good guys, if I can put it that way? What is your feeling on that?
My perspective on that is quite simple, is whomever is causing harm or intent to cause harm to the population will be dealt with. And that's really where I stand on this mission.
Okay. Lieutenant General Bouchard, I thank you very much. I know you're just beginning what is going to be a very intense time. Thank you for your time this morning. We'll be following and with great interest.
Thank you so much, Heather, for getting in touch with me today, and best to you.
And to you, sir. Thank you.